Hi, my name is Dr. Alistair Markland. I teach international relations at Oxford Brookes University. And today I'm going to talk about my article titled Whose Age of Anxiety? Provincialising Ontological Insecurity. Now, the question that's really at the heart of this article is, are we living through an age of anxiety? According to recent scholarship within international relations and the subfield of ontological security studies, a confluence of multi-pronged crises from climate change, COVID-19, and growing authoritarian populism to the apparent decline of the liberal international order have brought about a new, novel era which is defined by a collective mood of anxiety, a time of heightened existential dread, and a pervasive sense of insecurity. I call this view of the current moment the Age of Anxiety thesis. This thesis has become popular in international relations literature that sought to centre novel theoretical approaches to understanding the relationship between global insecurity and subjectivity, particularly existentialist approaches and Lacanian psychoanalytic approaches, which have recently become popular frameworks within ontological security theory. The logic here is that if anxiety is central to international relations in the 21st century, then surely we need theoretical tools and concepts which help us understand how anxiety functions as a collective mood in world politics. Now, the article asks us to pause for a minute and to consider whether this age of anxiety thesis is really universally applicable. My core argument is that the age of anxiety narrative overgeneralizes from the liberal and Western experience of global politics. So I want to shift the discussion towards spaces of anxiety, not just ages of anxiety. I argue that the world is composed of a complex pluriverse of overlapping sociocultural spaces which reflect a diversity of emotional repertoires. The way that political, economic, or environmental crises are emotionally processed depends on a complex set of social mediations which differ from one context to another. As well as thinking about spaces of anxiety, the article also takes on the temporal imaginary contained within the Age of Anxiety narrative. The Age of Anxiety narrative periodizes the current moment as a kind of historical rupture. Conjunctural crises have brought about a new age of unprecedented uncertainty. I argue that this periodization follows a Eurocentric reading of the recent past, particularly in the way that it centers threats to liberal subjectivity. This temporal reading reflects a kind of broken Enlightenment teleology, where the promises of the end of history have faltered under the strains of the failing liberal international order. The final section of the article seeks to provincialize this reading of history by contrasting this temporal narrative with post-colonial literature on anxiety. Drawing on the concept of post-colonial anxiety, this literature offers a different temporal reading of anxious experience. While the Age of Anxiety thesis assumes a sudden rupture, a crisis of the present, many post-colonial populations live with long-standing, recursive anxieties rooted in long-term processes of racialization, colonial violence, and marginalization. I argue that by ignoring these longer and deeper forms of anxious experience, the Age of Anxiety narrative recenters the liberal Western subject whilst effectively silencing non-Western subjectivities. I then conclude the article by calling for a pluriversal approach to ontological security, one that recognizes multiple ways of experiencing, interpreting, and historicizing anxiety. This means moving beyond the assumption that the West's crisis is the crisis. It means integrating non-Western case studies, foregrounding post-colonial temporality, and resisting the urge to homogenize global experiences of moods and emotions.